I'm going to need to do something before I can start this.
But first, let me take a selfie.
Come on down, people. Woo! Alright, on more serious. So I am the fourth. I'm the youngest child of four. I come from a very large Irish family where I have 19 cousins and six aunts and uncles. I went to a boarding school in Long Island, New York, and I really had to figure out how to be pretty independent and on my own at that time. Hey Liz, you out there somewhere? Woo-woo! Also into Knox. I went to University of Hartford where I played Division I volleyball on a full ride scholarship. Thank you very much. And my very first job was at Disneyland on the Davy Crockett canoes. My loves are my husband and my 5-year-old boy who will be 6 in 10 days. Watch out, kindergarten. Let's go. And, but what I really think that I was asked to come up here is to talk about how I'm going to start my 16th year in special education. And how 50% of special education teachers leave this field within the first 5 years. And half of those teachers don't even make it till their 10th year, which equates to 75% of the teachers leave this field within the first 10 years. That is not the stats that we have in Redondo, and we give kudos to you guys. I first started teaching in Long Beach Unified in 2002. And my very first week, I had a doozy. I had a runner, I had a streaker, I had a kid that had a seizure, and while I was attending to that, one of my little girls came to school in pigtails and cut off one of them while I was doing that. It was horrible. Probably the worst phone call I've made to date. And that was a lot for a 22-year-old girl who still felt like Thursday nights was college night at the bars. I quickly needed to connect with the people that I worked with. I made friends with everyone. I needed someone to laugh with. I needed someone to cry with. I really needed to find the community so that I could stay sane and happy through this experience. But my best advocate is still my mother. She's my biggest support system, my professional and personal cheerleader. Of 42 years in teaching herself. And so the adventure begins of me coming to Redondo Beach. I started at Alta Vista, 50%. I moved to Madison, 100%, where I fully immersed myself into the community. I joined every single committee, the SST team, I was clearly writing the IEPs, and I just fully became a part of this. And I really loved it. One of the things that I joined was the Healthier Generation. I'm sure all of you guys have that, and I was able to go to Washington, D.C. with all of these principals and accept the award on behalf of Madison. I have some stories on these principals if anyone's interested afterwards. Which led me to the Wellness Festival. First year, Madison had, what, 5 people go? I can't even remember. Well, the next year, we took it. Anybody remember those red pants? And then we earned the gold ribbon. And that was so fun. None of this, any of us, did alone. We all had to work together. We all had to support each other and bounce ideas off of one another to make it as big as it really was. And it was so fun to be a part of that team. But I think that I need to tell my Christopher story. So let's go back to Long Beach Unified, my very first year of school. I had a mute child. He had an IEP, and all of his goals were written for a child who was mute. He was 6 and had been in the special day program for the first 3 years, from age 3 until then. And he had never spoken a word. I was busy teaching my phonemic awareness lessons and thought maybe I should introduce sign language to him so that he could be a part of my lessons. Well, he kind of just sat there. He really wasn't a part of it. I didn't feel like I was connecting so well with him. Until his IEP came, and his mother walks into the room and is like, "Oh, Miss Ruffner, Christopher just loves you. He tells me about your laugh. He tells me all the things that you're teaching him. He feels so safe in your room." Well, that's the goal, right? For these kids to come into our classrooms and feel safe and enjoy learning while they're at it. I was like, sweet, but wait a second, your kid doesn't talk. What are you talking about? So I kind of was like, how is this even happening? But how often does this happen that we perceive something of who a student is, and then when the parents are talking about them, it's totally different. I've sat in plenty of IEPs and SSTs where what the parents are saying is just not what we see in our school. Where's my water? So I told her to prove it. I asked her to videotape him. Thank you so much. I asked her to videotape it. I said, there's no way he's talking at home. So, you gotta think, 2002, this is pre-Facebook, pre-Instagram, pre-Snapchat, we're talking the big VHS people. It was a task for this mom. A couple weeks went by, I got nothing. I called her up, "Hey, where's this tape you told me you were gonna send?" It had been in the backpack the whole time. She wanted me to wait for Christopher to give it to me, and so I hadn't known. Well, I did what every good teacher does, right? I took his recess away. And I sat there and I talked to him and said, "Oh, all of your friends really want you to ask them to play. And I really want you to tell me all the fun things that you're learning in our class." And over and over. Well, it took 3 recesses for him to finally get sick of my voice before he gave me this tape and ran out the door. I watched in absolute shock. Here is this boy who is fully fluent. He told this story about Christopher Columbus finding America and then the first Thanksgiving feast. And all of this time, I was just amazed. I ran down to my principal's office. I grabbed the school psychologist, the counselor, everybody who knew him. And we all watched in absolute shock that here was this boy who told a wonderful story. I need to go back because I forgot to mention something. Not only did he say all of that in English, but then he said it all again in Spanish. So he was fully fluent in 2 languages and didn't say a word for 6 hours sitting in my classroom. I can't even go a staff meeting without having a sidebar conversation. Sorry. So, where was I? I'm sorry. So we've made a plan, right? And all of us had our own ideas. And I felt like really all he needed to do was say "here" when I was taking attendance in the morning. And he didn't do it. It was not an easy task just because I knew he wasn't willing to share his voice with everybody. Well, it took a while, but his former teacher comes barging into my classroom one day. And she pulls him out and she starts yelling at him. And she's like, "You can talk. This isn't okay. This is not acceptable behavior. You need to do better." And I saw him totally break down. And I went outside and I grabbed him from her. And I said, "Come on, Christopher, let's go back to my room." Where he looked at me and with the softest little voice said, "Thank you." And that was our moment. We connected. He then trusted me to hear him talking. Well, we worked in the back table and he would talk to just me in the classroom. And slowly we brought a friend in and then a second friend, but he was very selective with who he allowed to hear his voice. We went outside to play kickball one day and he really wanted to pitch. And I said, "Sure, you can pitch, but you have to go and ask Santiago yourself." So he slowly crept over to Santiago and he said whatever he said. And Santiago absolutely freaked out. He ran to every single student in my class, every single face. He was like, I just heard Christopher talking. Christopher can talk. I just heard him. And my whole class huddled around Christopher just to hear his voice. And at that moment, he shifted. He shifted from being a selective mute child to a kid I had a really hard time keeping quiet in those phonemic awareness lessons. This little boy, my Christopher, his story, yes, it's remarkable and amazing. But it's not much different than a student sitting in your classroom who's having a really hard time learning how to read, or spell, or memorize some facts in your history class. His story demonstrates that we all need to work together with the kids, the people we work with in our site, and their parents. It's a part of our job to connect. I didn't touch that. When we all work together, the whole school can succeed. It is our duty to work with these kids, the parents, the grade level staff, the administration, the counselors, the psychologists, district personnel, you name it. They all are part of this team. So, clearly, I love a good selfie, right? And in the spirit of connecting, the Redondo Beach people would like to introduce a new hashtag, RBUSD Connects, and we would like for you guys to post some pictures of a groupie or a selfie, something that highlights your school, a bulletin board in your classroom, a project that you rocked at, something that you guys can show that all of us in this room can see and be a part of. But just remember, no kids and no alcohol drinks, even though that's where most of us connect, right? So with that, I say thank you very much for listening and have a wonderful 2000.
Thank you, Kristy. Let's thank again Tommy, Lisa, and Chris.